So Diane Abbott has long positioned herself as a trailblazer, the voice of anti-racism, a champion for the oppressed. Those who may not know, or for those across the pond, Diane Abbott is a British Labour MP, first elected in 1987 as the UK's first black female member of parliament. But the very ideological framework that she's pushed for years, this rigid, racialized worldview where everything is filtered through a lens of power and identity, has now come back to bite her. She's being punished by her own side. That's what happens in identity politics. Eventually, the purity test comes for you. She has once again been suspended from the Labour Party. Why? Because she stood by her previous comments suggesting that racism faced by black people is somehow fundamentally different than the prejudice experienced by Jewish people, Irish people, travellers. Her argument is that because blackness is visible, so the racism is in effect more real. Now, she first made these remarks back in 2023, which she retracted under pressure. And now, 2 years later, she's decided to double down in a BBC interview, insisting that she was right all along. And now, quite rightly, she's been told by her own party to take a seat again. This is progress. Not just because someone is finally being held accountable for a dangerously divisive worldview, but because it actually exposes the incoherence of the whole identity politics project. Let's address the actual claim at the center of all this, the idea that black people experience a special kind of racism. You know what I find interesting? We constantly complain about being othered, but then there's a strange obsession with othering ourselves, always finding new ways to separate, differentiate, and exclude ourselves. It's like there's this deep investment in being seen as the exception, as if shared humanity isn't good enough. It has to be an experience that no one else can quite understand or relate to. Whether or not someone can see your identity on your skin is completely irrelevant to the nature of racism. Racism is the belief that your race or your racial identity makes you inferior. That can be expressed toward any group. And yes, that includes white people, that includes Jewish people, that includes anyone. To suggest otherwise is a deliberate attempt to redefine racism to suit a political narrative. This is the problem with the modern activist redefinition of racism as prejudice plus power. It's just a weapon used to silence dissent, create double standards, and to absolve some people from responsibility while condemning others based purely on their group membership.
That draws specious, spurious parallels between white racism and black racism. Racism presupposes the ability to control a significant segment of the population economically, politically, and socially by imposing law, covenant, and restriction on their lives. Black people ain't had no capacity to do that. Can we be bigoted? Yes. Can we be prejudiced? Yes. Racist? No. The unintelligence of the formulation is problematic when any black person says that.
This definition of racism to include power is about control. At its core, it says only people in power can be racist. So in this framework, a black person calling a white person a racial slur or discriminating against a white person isn't racism. It's just prejudice. Why? Because they supposedly lack institutional power. But the thing is, power is not static. It's not a single top-down entity that only white people or men or the majority possess. Power exists in context, and today, identity is the currency of power. If you belong to a group that's considered historically marginalized, whether that's based on race, gender, sexuality, whatever other category, your opinion is often treated as inherently more valid. Regardless of the substance, your perspective is seen as truth simply because of who you are, not because of what you're saying. And the reverse is also true. If you don't belong to the right identity group, your views are immediately suspect. If you question anything, even politely, even with facts, you're not engaging in debate, you're invalidating lived experience, you're speaking from privilege, or you're the one perpetuating harm. There's been so many instances of this. And this is the kind of attitude that creates and gives strength to ideas such as black people can't be racist. And people who push this idea, they don't realize what they're actually saying. Because what you're really saying when you repeat that line is that black people aren't morally equal. You are stripping us from agency. You're infantilizing us, suggesting that we don't have the same capacity for hatred, for judgment, for prejudice, for moral choices as everyone else. That we're somehow exempt from the full spectrum of human behavior. It's so dehumanizing, because acknowledging someone's full humanity means acknowledging all of it. The good, the bad, the kindness, the cruelty, the wisdom, the ignorance. That's what it means to be fully human. Aren't they the ones that say that white supremacists think of us as less than human? But then what do they think they're doing by perpetuating these ideas? If you're only willing to see one group as perpetual victims incapable of wrongdoing, then you're not treating them as equals. You're reducing them to symbols.
Barack Obama, when he was president, he had a white janitor. He fires the white janitor because the janitor was white. Is that racist?
It's prejudice. Wrong.
Wait, hold on. You just said the definition of racism is prejudice plus power.
Systemic
Yeah.
power.
Yeah, the system of the executive branch of the United States government, which is the most powerful country in the world.
African American people do not have systemic power.
Barack Obama, African American, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, Barack Obama, president, most powerful man in the world and of the most powerful country in the world?
He's in a place of power, but he does not have systemic power.
What do you mean? He literally controls the government system. Is the executive branch of the government a system?
Yes.
Is Barack Obama a African American man?
Yes.
Okay, so the executive branch of the government is a system. Barack Obama, an African American man, was the leader of a system, the executive branch.
The concept of racism is very simple. It's judging or mistreating someone based on their race. That's it. That can come from anyone toward anyone. If a black person harasses or assaults an Asian person because of their race, that is racism, committed by the black person. Not white supremacy, not internalized whiteness, not some other abstraction, just plain racism. And it should be named as such. And honestly, we need to stop turning racism into some kind of competition. It's not a contest for who has suffered the most. There's no medal ceremony at the end of all this. We used to understand racism as treating people unfairly because of their race, any race. It was a principle, a universal. Now it's a partisan tool, a rhetorical weapon used to shame, silence, and divide. And what all of this points to is a deeper problem with how we've allowed certain ideas about race and identity to dominate public discourse, and frankly, it's doing complete harm to our social fabric. We've normalized this idea that racism isn't about your actions anymore, it's about whether or not you're in the power group. That somehow if you're from a so-called marginalized background, then your behavior gets a different label. It's just prejudice, or maybe just frustration, maybe even justified anger, but never racism. This isn't moral clarity, it's a dangerous double standard. We've also fallen into this trap of assuming that the only racism that really matters is the kind that can be seen instantly, like so-called anti-black racism, while the rest gets sidelined as pretty much less serious, even dismissed. If we want to move forward as a society, we have to drop the double standards and we need to return to universal values, principles, and ideas. We have to stop making excuses for bad ideas just because they come wrapped in this language of progress. Because with all this, we're not building a fairer society, a better, more cohesive society. We're just entrenching new forms of division.